Now it's time to draft the front panel, which I have my pattern paper laid already and I have my lines drawn out. Okay, this part is the center front. Just pay a closer attention. This is the center front of my front panel. I constructed my neckline. When I was constructing the neckline, I used 3 inches for the width and 3 inches for the depth. So for your neck width, it has to be the same thing as the back. Whatever you use as a neck width for the back is what you must use for the front, because the shoulder lines are going together. We are going to join the shoulder lines together. Now, after constructing my neckline with 3 inches for the width and 3 inches for the depth, then I took the measurements of the neckline curve and I got 5 inches. Then I added 5 inches with the back neckline measurement I measured when I was drafting the back panel. So 5 plus 3.375, that is 8.375. And the next circumference measurement I'm working with is 16 inches. So 8.375, don't forget this is the half part of the pattern of the bodies. It's going to be in 2 places after cutting. So I multiply this by 2 and it gives me 16.625, which is far above the next circumference measurement. Now, if you find yourself in this type of situation whereby you got more than what you needed, all you need to do is to reduce the measurements you use for the front neck depth. You cannot tamper with the neck width, but you can tamper with the neck depth, because we have already used 3 inches for the back panel. So I leave the 3 inches like so. Then I reduce this by 3.75. This is 3.75 more. I'm supposed to have 8 inches for both front and the back. If I multiply it by 2, I will have 16, and I have 8.375. So which means I have excess of 3.75. This point is a 3 inches point. From the starting point line to this point is 3 inches. So I just took this up by 0.375. I subtracted the excess I have there. So from here I measured 0.375 upward and I reconstruct the neckline. So when I reconstructed the neckline, I took the measurement again and I got 4.625. When I added 4.625 together with 3.375, it gave me exactly 8 inches, and 8 multiplied by 2 gives me 16 inches. So for the neckline, I don't have any issue. So the neckline is settled and I have the shoulder line constructed just the way I constructed the back panel. The armhole, the only difference is here I use 0.75. If you have been drafting your basic bodice block very well, all this will not be new to you. Then I inserted my vertical measurements. Vertical measurement, this is the chest level, the bust level, the empire level, and the waist level. I drew out the lines and I plotted my darts. When I was plotting the darts, the bust part measurement I'm working with is 7.5. Divided by 2 gives me 3.75. Then from the center front to this point is 3.75. After marking out the 3.75, then I measured my dart intake. I used 3 inches for the dart intake, purposely because of the style we have on the reference image. On that dress, if you look at it closely, we have double dart, one on the mid neckline and one on the mid armhole. That is double dart. So I have to have much of that intake here in order to distribute the dart for both 2 points. So 3 inches here. After 3.75, then I measured 3 inches forward and I got the midpoint. Then on the bust level, I inserted exactly half of the bust part measurements, which is 3.75, and I connected the point to the mid dart like so. In this case, I did not come down by 1 inch on the dart. From the bust level, I did not measure 1 inch downward. This is intentional and you will get to understand as we proceed. Then I connected the 2 points I have by the side to the bust level. So this point is very important. When you are plotting your dart must not move away from this point. So that is the point where half of your bust plan measurement falls. This point is called the apex. This area is called the apex. So your dart must not move away from that point. So when you are applying your dart manipulation, all your dart intake meets on the apex point. Wherever you are picking your dart from, either from the French side or the mid armhole, the mid neck, the mid shoulder, wherever you are picking your dart from, they meet on the apex. So you must not joke with this point, and your dart must not move away from this point in the process of dart manipulation. Though we are still going to reconstruct the dart after the final pattern, we are still going to move it away from the apex, but as at now it has to stop on the apex. Then I come to the empire level. On the empire level, I want to pick my dart. Though when I was connecting the dart, automatically I have about 1.5 inches of dart intake on the empire level, but it is not enough to achieve the style we are working with, which is our reference image. So for this reason, I'm using up to 3 inches. So from the middle line, I marked out 1.5 inches here and 1.5 inches here. You can see what I have. Then I will connect the 1.5 inches downward. I intentionally left this because I don't want you to get confused. So if I connected this, the dart will look somehow to you. So that was why I left it. So here as well, then I will take this to the apex like so. Though we are not using this dart yet, I'm just constructing it so that after cutting out my pattern, I will not forget. Okay, so this is the dart with the empire level dart. You can see the lines, and this is the one I will be cutting for the dart manipulation. Now to the upper part of my pattern. The dart I took on the waistline is coming to the mid neck and to the mid shoulder. So that was why I have my lines like so. So all I need to do is to take the measurement I have on the neckline, which is what I did. I measured this neckline and I got the midpoint, which is here. Then I connected the point straight to the apex with a straight ruler. And I did the same thing on the armhole. I got the mid armhole, then connected this straight to the apex like so and like this. So that is how I arrived at this pattern. The next step is to cut out my pattern and move my dart to the appropriate places using slash and spread method. So now I will be cutting out my dart and I will move it to the mid armhole and the mid neckline. The dart I'm cutting is the first dart I plotted, not the other one I plotted with the empire level. So with this, there is no break on the empire level. So this is going upward on a straight line. I will cut this all through until I get to the apex points. Then I will stop. Now I'm not going to cut on the other side. I'm going to cut on the mid line. So I've cut out one part of the dart. This is the second part. Then I will come to the line I drew on the armhole and I will open it up. So I'm not cutting this out completely. When I'm about to get to the apex point, I will stop like this. So now I've opened up the line I have on the armhole. You can see. Then I can close the dart I cut out on the waist. And I will hold it with my tapes. So as you can see, I've closed the dart I have on the waistline. That is the part I cut out. Now to the other side of the dart, from here to here, I will cut it like this. But in this case, I will not open this part yet. So now I will place my pattern on the fresh pattern paper I laid on my table. Now I have my pattern taped on the new pattern paper, as you can see. Then I will open up the dart I closed on the waistline. Okay, so because I've taped down this part of my pattern, so this place will not move, then I can remove the remaining darts I cut out. So all I need to do is just to cut this out completely. So now I have the darts cut out completely, which is the remaining dart I have on the waist. Then I can proceed in opening up the mid neckline I drew out. When I'm about to get to the apex, I will stop. Then I will just move this gently and close the waist dart completely. Okay, now we are good. So now that I have the waist dart closed completely, as you can see, then I will need to adjust my pattern and make sure the edges of the center front align with the edges of my new pattern paper. So guys, now the next step is to tape down the opening part. That is the part I moved my dart to. So I will take this down, and the other side as well. So after taping down my pattern paper properly, as you can see, then I will be drawing out the dart I moved on both sides. Okay, so after plotting the dart, then I will trace out the remaining part of my pattern. Now I have my pattern traced out on the new pattern paper, including the vertical lines I drew out on the pattern. I transfer all the lines using my tracing wheel, and the remaining darts which I have not cut out that I plotted for the empire level, I also trace this out with my tracing wheel. I transfer the lines on the new pattern paper. I traced out my pattern exactly the way I have it. The shape I have on the waistline is what I traced out, like this. On the side, on the armhole, I trace it out, the shoulder line, the neckline, and the dart itself. Then I will have to transfer the apex point on the new pattern paper. So I will have to move this upward a little, then punch this with my sewing pin. So I will just move it up, then punch the points. Okay, and if you cannot do that, just make sure you note the measurement you have here. So after drawing out this line, then you can insert the exact measurement, which is 3.75. Now I can separate my pattern from my new pattern paper. Then I have this. So the next step is to trace out my lines clearly. So guys, now I have my lines traced out clearly, as you can see. What I traced on the new pattern paper is exactly what I have on my bodice pattern. You can see it. So all the vertical lines I have here, the horizontal lines I have on my pattern, I transferred everything just the way I have it on the new pattern paper as well. And the remaining that I plotted for the empire level, I transferred it on the new pattern also. Now the next step is to fold my darts in order to reconstruct the neckline, because the neckline is broken already because of the darts I moved to this part. And on the armhole area, the armhole has broken as well, so I will need to fold my darts and reconstruct my armhole. So in doing this, I will fold my dart line like this. So I will fold it gently and stop on the apex. So with this, I will have my dart leg. Dart leg means the middle of the dart. I will open it up, then draw out the middle of the dart. Now I have the middle of the dart drafted out. Then I will measure this 1 inch forward from the apex, because I need to move my darts away from the apex. If you can recollect, I told you we are still going to move the darts away from the apex when it's time. So now it's time to move the darts away from the apex. So with the help of the center line I plotted, I will measure one out, one from the apex. This is the apex. So from this point, I will measure 1 inch on the midline and I will reconstruct the darts. So the darts will now be from the 1 inch point to the 2 edges. Then I will refold my darts. So the folding now will be on the new line I drafted. And I will make it overlap gently. So you have to be calm as much as possible when doing this, because your pattern must not squeeze at the center. So with the help of your index finger, you will be smoothing up your dart points, just the way I'm doing it. You can see this part is not squeezed. And I will hold it with my tape. Okay, so now I can go ahead and reconstruct the neckline. Because of the dart that has been moved to the mid neckline, there is a little break point on the neck area. I will just place my curve ruler and smoothen that part. I will just blend it up like so. So having a break point during that manipulation is a normal thing. So it's just for you to reconstruct the parts. I have that reconstructed, and I will add my seam allowance immediately before opening the dart hole. So seam allowance of 1/2 inch is needed. Okay, so this is settled. Then I will come to the second dart, the one I have on the armhole, and I will repeat the same process. I will fold the dart, get the dart leg. The middle of the dart is a dart leg. I will draw it out and move this dart away by 1 inch. Then I will reconstruct the dart, then fix the broken point I have on the armhole area. So now I have the second dart closed, as you can see. So this is a dart. After closing the dart, I fixed the broken point on the armhole area, and I added my seam allowance. I added my seam allowance of 1/2 inch on the armhole, and I added 1/2 inch on the shoulder line. Then I can proceed in cutting this out.